Hi, and welcome all to the CAA show. My name is Juggi Bhasin, and CAA is Conversations and Analysis. So finally, the government has reorganized the cabinet deck. It is almost as if the Prime Minister has listened to people like us. There has been a widespread impression that the new cabinet caters to important constituencies and community segments like the OBCs and Dalits. Yeah, all that is there. And that is all fine. But why have people not noticed that the reorganized cabinet also addresses the concerns and aspirations of a major segment of society? And that segment is the ever-growing urban middle class, people like you and me, people like us. As citizens of this country, we all aspire to many things. But the ever-growing urban middle class certainly aspires to some very specific things. Let me first tell you some of these aspirations, and then we can discuss the government's response to them. Topping the list is meritocracy, or installing people of talent and quality education in positions of power. A close second to meritocracy is a demand for accountability from men and women in positions of power. The third big concern and aspiration is a better standard of life, more specifically, a regime that controls and manages well retail, food, and petrol inflation. The pandemic has shown that health infrastructure and delivery on the ground is a major concern of the middle classes. And finally, the middle classes love a good communicator. The days of silent workers, garbled, irate, ineffective communication are long gone. Now, when the second wave of the pandemic hit us, the government was found wanting in all these parameters. It appeared that the government at the center was adrift, perhaps even MIA or missing in action. But even more than the funding response of the government towards the second wave, what really got the people's goat was the complete radio silence on part of the government all through that traumatic time. All we saw were sad images of a grim-looking prime minister sitting in his office, interacting virtually with doctors and oxygen manufacturers. There was something quite sad and forlorn and even ridiculous about the entire imagery. Besides the politicians, the ever-ready to preach health secretary, the joint secretary, Mr. Love Agarwal, Niti Ayog's Dr. Paul, and others movers and shakers of the vaccination program, and those handling India's response to shortage of beds, oxygen, and critical medicines had also disappeared from public view like the magician, Houdini. No minister was seen reassuring people. No bureaucrat was seen giving people hope. The vulture press had a field day, magnifying the dismal state of affairs 100x times. Only brave hearts like Dr. Guleria faced the heat of the crisis by making appearances on TV, advising caution, giving information, hope, and comfort. It was a massive communications failure. The blame, if you ask me, lay completely at the doorstep of the then Information and Broadcasting Minister, Mr. Prakash Javadekar. Mr. Javadekar is reputed to be a very affable man, enjoying good relations with members of the press. But he failed in this very important duty, that of reassuring people and communicating government plans of how they would combat the crisis. Now, of course, he had to go. The funding response of Dr. Harshvardhan is another case in point. He looked like a man carrying a burden twice his weight and 3 times his height. He would be prone to irate, snappy responses, and his visits to hospitals would fill people with dread instead of giving them hope. His man and materials management was zilch, zero, nada. And one of the other key ministers to be asked was Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad. He had, if you really ask me, become the victim of his own angry, incoherent, testy interviews where he would warn and threaten Twitter again and again, only to end up doing nothing. His utterances began to symbolize the will of the central government, always threatening but doing nothing. So all 3 ministers perished in the line of fire because they could not deliver. They were functioning without accountability, and they were very poor communicators. Now, look at the new lot, which stands out in sharp contrast to the old lot. There are people from IIT, Wharton, Harvard, eminent lawyers, doctors, many relatively young, eager to prove themselves in a battlefield. They are what we, the middle classes, would like our kids to be when they grow up. These appointments have given hope to the middle classes that they will also have their day. We need to keep in mind that there is only so much room for a career politician, the tireless party worker. You can be a loyalist, a diehard ideologue, but if you cannot deliver on the ground, then you are living on borrowed time. Look at the elevation of Mr. Hardeep Puri in contrast. When his older colleagues around him failed to deliver, he succeeded because he took his job seriously, did not grow entitled to his ministership, and importantly, communicated firmly and clearly the Central Vista program of the government. Today, he has been given the charge of controlling petrol inflation, which I have no doubt he will most certainly do. But in the end, the cabinet overhaul was a test of the Prime Minister, whether he still retained that old fire and drive that we all knew he had in abundance. There were times when we were in despair watching a man of the stature of the Prime Minister being forced to interact with manufacturers of oxygen. In the recent reorganization of the cabinet, the Prime Minister, by ruthlessly trimming and chopping and addition in the cabinet, has shown two abilities. The first is that, yes, he still has that old fire and shrewdness in him. And the second is that he is ready to own up to his mistakes, bring in course correction, and provide able governance. For me, the exhibition of the second quality is of greater significance. Everyone at some point or the other falls and stumbles. The real test is how quickly one can get up and continue walking to one's destination. Yesterday, the Prime Minister exhibited that very quality. And now, I wish the new cabinet the very best. If they deliver, certainly all our lives will become better. So goodbye, everyone, and keep watching the show. And cheers and have a great night, everyone.